right, thank you, Brooke.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining today. There's just a bit of the agenda, so thank you, Brooke. That was our GSI overview. Briefly about me, my name is Bud Shaw. I'm a solution consultant, solution architect with GSI. I've been working with JD Edwards for about 23 years now. So I'm pretty familiar with all of the areas, but I am a more functional guy than I am technical. I wouldn't be called a CNC or even a developer, but I know a lot about the different areas and all the UDOs and orchestrator and things like that. So when about a little over a year ago, I started, when we started thinking about 64-bit and the announcement from Oracle that going into the year 2022, which we're into now, that Oracle, was going to require everybody to go to 64-bit back at the 9255 release, which was the last one offering the option. I started thinking about, why go to 64-bit, other than being forced into it. So this presentation is really to kind of help address, some of the, what are the benefits, other than being kind of forced into it. If you wanted to stay current release levels, what are some of the good things? Why do it? So we'll cover in some of the benefits of the tools release 925 and above, aka 926, which we're into now, which was released back in December, I think. Why you should go for a 64-bit upgrade. And then I'm lucky to have John Bassett join us here. He's our CTO and security officer as well. And he's lived the upgrades. We've done quite a few of these 64-bit upgrades. So he'll talk about some of the technical challenges to help you what you might look at. And then as Brooke mentioned, we'll go into an open discussion, Q&A and topics. Okay.
Just thought I'd say hello. This is John. I'll talk on the technical side, and I do have a CNC background for those of you that don't know me.
Yep. Thank you, John. So, why 64-bit? Even me, I have to admit, in my naivety back in the days, I thought, we're going from 32 to 64-bit. Yeah, it's going to be faster. But what I didn't realize is that, 64-bit versus 32-bit, it's exponentially faster, right? As this slide kind of points out, 32-bit is 6 gigabytes of data chunks at a time, whereas 64-bit is 16 exabytes or 18 quintillion bytes of RAM. So it just makes sense that your systems are going to run faster and give you better performance. And so some of the things to think about, just user satisfaction. I've been lucky enough to be on, probably I've been through half a dozen different environments, be it OCI or AWS or a home, a home hosted environments that are 64-bit. And right away, I mean, I can tell these things, JD Edwards is just faster. I'm spending much less time waiting for screens to load, for data to be retrieved. Certainly reports and other things just move quicker. So your apps run faster, your jobs run faster. And if I suggest, think about some of your heavy process programs like your MRP or DRP or CRP, where they just they run faster than they did in the old days, but they're even faster now because of 64-bit processing. And it kind of evidence as to why what this brings to you. Oracle in and of itself now is including some of the older what were called memory resident applications. The newest one being with release 22 is the resource, they call it resource console, resource summary, which are MRP graphical workbench to do kind of simulation, requirements planning. Used to require an extra license and used to require Exadata to help handle the performance of it. You don't have to pay any extra for a license. If you're doing requirements planning, you get to use the module. And with 64-bit, I found them to be quite, they perform just fine. Certainly, I mean, I haven't really stretched it with a huge load of MRP messages and stuff like that, but you know, the Oracle is including. There's also the project portfolio, which was a project manager. They're doing more with the JET apps and replacing the ADF and JET apps, and they load quite fast, allowing for drag and drop functionality to work within JD Edwards and a graphical nature to them. Interfaces and integration, process bigger chunks of data at a time. I mean, if you're doing anything with orchestrator, file inputs and outputs and interfaces and integrations, you know, they run faster. It's just the nature of it. And security and administration are enhanced. You know, there's different, you know, just by nature, a 64-bit system is more secure than a 32-bit system. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So as I said, you know, when I started working on this was, you know, and I presented one before the 926 release. So I've been able to enhance it with what's in 926 now for you folks. The 925 release was the last release that offered the option of 32 versus 64. 64-bit had been out for a while, but Oracle was saying, you know, this is the last release, and 926 going forward is going to require you to be 64-bit. I apologize. I see I'm missing a decimal place in this slide for 926. But looking back in the 925 release before 926, which was the last 64-bit, and people were opting to stay with 925 so that they didn't have to go to 64-bit. And that's kind of when I thought, well, you know, you should really take and, you know, bite the bullet, if you will, and go to 64-bit because there's a lot of benefits to it. You know, the 925 release, you know, offered, you know, removal of local database on the FAT clients. The constant web deployment, the web-based, the P98220W web object management application just keeps on getting more and more functionality to deploy not only UDOs, but now to be able to upgrade and do package deployments without a FAT client. So less dependence upon a FAT client was one of the enhancements and key drivers for 925. Improved user experience, constantly, Oracle and JD Edwards is constantly evolving the forms personalizations, the form extensions, the UX1 components. Talked about JET and ADF applications and things like that are being improved. And then there were a lot of server enhancements, you know, for, you know, server manager and things like that. And then they announced back then a enhanced security, you know, for logging, user login, you know, login and out, and tracking user logging enhancements. And that was in the 925. I mean, as I, you know, 64-bit, you know, is natively more secure because of you know, that server location address for Linux and OS and I mean, for iOS and for a Windows for Windows platforms. But just, you know, just the fact that 64-bit, you know, it requires bigger bytes to sort out what and how they can attack and get and efficiently break into your system. Now, and we're already into, so in December, if you're not aware of 2021, I think it was December, Oracle announced, well, actually it was last year at the in focus in the fall, with, I think it was November, December timeframe, Oracle announced Release 22, which is the new naming convention for JD Edwards, the application side, and it came along with 926 tools, right? So that's now, this is now where we're at today with Oracle and JD Edwards, 926 tools release, which is requiring a 64-bit architecture, right? And along with it, it's not just the performance and the things that 64-bit brings, but they've done quite a bit of enhancing, right? zero downtime deployment, one of my favorites. You know, the fact that they've done some things in the ini file folders and stuff like that, where they can deploy a package and nobody has to be off the system. When their process is finished running, they pick up a new application to load into the kernel, it picks up the change. So no more downtime. A lot of their enhanced security, not only for server manager, but within the logging and things within JD Edwards. Server manager, offline monitoring for zero downtime, and the health of your system. And then other things like applications like automating the procurement discounts, capturing your procurement discounts for the whole year as you work with your suppliers. The other drivers are optimize and transform. So automate, optimize, and transform. Optimizing was simplifying processes. There's, they've done some enhancements to the applications to, easily update a location when you're receiving and going through a receipt routing and stuff like that. New interfaces, the ones I'm talking about, the JET, versus replacing ADF interfaces, the enhanced applications such as resource summary, resource console for requirements planning, rental management, inventory, more in the manufacturing for graphical, where used and bill of material structures and different areas within JD Edwards, simplifying the processes and views within the applications themselves. And then allowing you through form extension improvements, right, to further, optimize your users using the system with being able to create and add form exits on your own. And modifying and personalizing the screens and launching an orchestration from a JD Edwards application form. One button click to perform a process. Whereas somebody would have to go into the application, form exit, update a field, save, and so forth. So you can launch an orchestrations to do that. Orchestrator itself, the orchestration studio, got a lot of enhancements and growth. The logic extensions is a whole new area within the orchestration to develop business logic and be able to plug that into an orchestration and have. So it's kind of, I think, more and more moving away from a development fat client into doing developing things you need to improve your processes within for your users on the glass, and then using the UDO deployment to approve them, share them, and then promote them from your PY to your DV to your PD environments without having to do package builds in the fat client. So a lot of enhancements in there, even things like workflow on the glass. So there's a whole lot more in all of these areas. I'm just kind of touching upon a high level view of them. We're actually doing release 22 workshops, and it's kind of a promotional plug, for if you see them, you might want to join in. We go into depth in a lot of these features in the 926, but this is all requiring 64-bit architecture. So, the top tool release enhancements were, I'm sorry, I gotta get rid of this guy. The digital transformation, orchestration enhancements, as I talked about, like logic extension, file IO, and assertion, and output logic, error assertions, output into files, file inputs, and outputs, to enhance your transformation, your digitally transformed processes using the orchestrator. The user experience, I mentioned a little bit about form extensions. You can now create a JD Edwards, E1 page and launch an orchestration from that page. Not only, so you can launch orchestration not only from an E1 form, but also from an E1 page. System automation, you know, as I mentioned, zero downtime, less dependent upon a flat client, more system monitoring, system enhanced security, monitoring and tracking logins and whatnot, and then just a continuous adoption model with the release 22.926 flow, right? Where, you know, it's not meant for constant, you know, upgrades maybe once a year. But then, you know, to take not only, and they're not even, so a lot of the enhancements are not even ESUs anymore. They're just, you know, UDO type plugins that you can download and take advantage of and load into your environment and let people to use. The top enhancements, I kind of listed them out here. You know, the assertion framework for orchestration, you know, output into files, exporting right into zip files, handling errors, a lot of enhanced configuration between enterprise servers and AIS server. You can allow variables in a REST file for, and then upload, you know, drag and drop, and, you know, pull files in, whereas before you'd have to write a Groovy script or something to map and handle that data in and out. They're doing more in Orchestrator to handle that. And optimizing, you know, retrieval of large data sets by the orchestrator, you know. So Orchestrator has been enhancing and growing, getting better and better and stronger, and allowing for process improvements and flows within your system. And then just user experience keeps on going. You know, the jet form, you know, drag and drop for the, you know, for some of the applications, staff utilization, you know, work center resource load, rental item inventory, you know, those kind of things are, and then just graphical representations for user experience and use. Enhanced search criteria, you know, you can interface, take right out of JD Edwards the an E1 search and take it right out to Excel. Just improvements all the way on through the applications and the user experience, you know. So I kind of touched upon a couple of these a little bit already, you know, less dependent upon the Windows client. You know, I think you're at the point now with 926 that you really only need a Windows client for pure business function development, maybe table generation, and that's about it. Zero downtime deployment. Again, I bring that up because it's one of my favorites, you know, the fact that, you know, you can be deploying JD Edwards and not have to say, oh, everybody's got to log off the system because we're gonna upgrade, you know, no longer a requirement. The update manager, these are some of these things are John can speak a little better to because he spends more time in the CNC role. But update manager, extended information, you're combining the, you know, dependency, ESU identifications and things like that, simplified administration, and then UBE improvements, performance. There's orchestrator can launch a UBE, you know, and whatnot. And then of course, where I live is more of the user experience, the form extensibility and logic extension workflow studio, you know. So, oops, sorry, I didn't want to do that. So why are we recommending, you know, a 64-bit upgrade, you know? The big one, obviously, performance. Second one is a lot of your third-party components, you know, your RF smarts or Loftwares or whatever, they're already 64-bit and waiting for JD Edwards to get, you know, caught up with it. You can future-proof your JDE. In other words, JDE is not going away. I mean, support is out there through the year 2032. And, you know, if you want to keep on getting updates and whatnot, you've got to go to 64-bit. And, you know, it just makes your users happy, makes everybody want to stay and take advantage of JD Edwards because of the performance enhancements and the features and things like that. And going in, you know, Java, you know, Oracle Client 32-bit installation will not be required anymore. So there's, you know, top reasons, you know, for the upgrade. this is, kind of where JD Edwards is going over the year to the year 2032. We're now in release 22 with tools 926. And I think it'll be, what they're saying is it'll be every year. Next year, it'll be release 23 and then release 24. That's at least what I've expected. And then you might get some feature packs or updates, going in a major release going forward. But, other than that, they're minor packs that you can just apply. And then, of course, there's, code comparison and features to handle that. This is kind of a look at where we are at. So the 925 was, which released in 2020, and then that was the last tools release allowing 32-bit processing. And now we're at release 22, 926, which has already been out there. And we've already got, quite a few people already have gone to that level. So pretty soon I'm going to hand this over to John. So he'll talk about some of the gotchas and whatnot, but before you get there, start thinking about some of your considerations, the hardware for 64-bit operating system, JD Edwards, all these things will be performance improvements going forward. If you stay with 32-bit, you got to run in 32-bit compatibility modes. If you don't go to the 926 release and go to 64-bit, you're going to have that overhead of the 32-bit compatibility mode, which will go away, right? You may be an I-series, IBM folks, with the three main benefits of the IBM system were, performance, stability, dependable. Those machines were, bulletproof. They were, so then why upgrade? Performance, 64-bit is supported on I-series. And you still will get your performance, stability, and dependability, but you'll get even greater performance. Third-party applications, many of them are already there, but you need to think about them, what they're, if you're using them, RFGen, DSI, RSmart, any of your mobile apps, or, that you may have, Loftware or Bartender for barcode printing and things like that. So those are things to take in consideration. So at this, John, are you out there? I was going to go into the next one, which is kind of talking about, modernizing your technology stack. Okay, John.
Thanks, Bud. I just wanted to mention the last holdout for third parties was DSI. We heard from Oracle that they finally gotten over.
Oh, John, you're breaking up.
If you're using. Is that any better?
No, your signal is bad, John. I think we've
Sorry,
lost.
guys, I got a bad signal.
Yeah.
That sounded a little better.
All right. Well, you
How
can.
about now? Am I improving?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. It's my fault. Just when it's my turn.
We can hear you fairly clearly now, John. I'm going to go to the slide that says what you can expect to upgrade.
Yeah, this if you're thinking about 64-bit, it could also be a really good time to upgrade your technology stack. If you're not able to, you're probably going to need to stay on the 925 series of tools. Also have 2.6 technology stack. You do have some things to consider upgrading. The first is that you're going to have any Windows servers, including the deployment server, you're going to need to upgrade to Windows 2019. So that's, can be a good thing if you're trying to get there. But there's more to it. You have the Windows server, but you also need to be worried about your database server. Even if you're a SQL Server shop that may not require a database upgrade, the deployment server at some point in time needs to be upgraded to the 19C Oracle database. Now, it's not something you have to do right away. You can do it at the end of your project, but you're gonna, in terms of Oracle certifications, Oracle 19C is the only one that is certified. We know that you can get away with doing the deployment server after the fact. You also have a high probability of needing to upgrade your middleware, WebLogic server. You have the 14.1 series and the 12.214, and we found that most of our systems are like on 12.1.3, which again is not MTR. But if you're thinking about it, I do highly recommend getting the most current, which is the 14.1. The biggie, and honestly, this is the one that drove the requirement for 100% 64-bit is Java. You will need to upgrade Java everywhere. All your deployment server, your enterprise servers, your web servers, they all require the 64-bit flavor installed. Now you can leave the 32-bit on there until you get upgraded to 64-bit, but then my advice, in order to make sure you're not using it, is to remove it. And this also includes the server manager agents. The compilers are all new as well. So you'll need to take an operating system. If you're on, an older version of Windows, you'll need to go to the, I think it's 2017 plus version of the compiler. One of the cool things is throughout this entire process, you'll also end up having to upgrade Change Assistant. That happens with just about every tools release. And the really cool feature about Change Assistant is it starts integrating back a little more intensely with your existing JDE system. For instance, dependencies used to look at the downloaded directory of ESUs. Now, via AIS, it actually looks back at your what you've actually installed for determining dependencies and the things that you need to install. During this process, of course, going from 32 to 64-bit, you are going to have to do a package build. And in doing this package build, you no longer have the 32-bit compiler, but you also have 32-bit business functions. So during this process, you're going to have to install all of Oracle's 32-bit, 64-bit business functions, as well as running through the compatibility checker on anything you've modified. So there's a little bit of work. This isn't a one-week tools release. You just need to understand that, plan for it. And again, if you don't have the capability, resources, or time to do this, you may have to stay on the 9.2.5 flavor, which is okay for now, but you can still take advantage of the 64-bit. Another bit of advice is that if you go to release 22 and you go with the 9.2.6, we're going to want to consider code currency at that time as well. So be prepared for applying update 6, which is somewhat a part of the release 22. So, and Bud was mentioning that release 22 and then next year it'll be release 23. Just remember, currently in Oracle's, may change naming conventions in the future, but you still have an underlying tools release. And release 22, the one that corresponds with it, is now the 9.2.6. I think .1, it might be .2 out at this time. I haven't checked in a few weeks. So I've listed some of the MTRs. Your Oracle database will need to be upgraded to 19C. SQL Server, you don't need to necessarily. Linux, if you're on a flavor of 7 or 8, it's still listed as the MTRs. It doesn't say a .5, .6, etc. So you might not have to upgrade all those. iSeries, those flavors of 7.3 and 7.4 are listed as supported. If you're there already, you won't be faced with those upgrades. But our advice: check the Oracle certifications and make sure you understand it. Best practice, in our opinion, if you have to go through a large uptick, especially if you're running virtual machines, is to spin up new machines if you have the ability. You know, for instance, upgrading a web server can take longer than just standing up a new web server, as one example. So yeah, there's, you know, the thing is that Bud is, you know, the rollback here, it's going to be very difficult. You're faced with putting your old database back, you're restoring. So you need to think long and hard about it. You can go through Oracle's, you know, doing DV, PY, PD separately, and that part still exists.
Yeah, this one was really just to kind of emphasize what you already talked about, John. You know, if you might not want to upgrade in place, you know, especially if you've got to upgrade a lot of hardware and things like that. You know, you can do your upgrade and then, you know, roll over, right? You know, switch everybody over. There is, you know, with the 9.2.5 release, Oracle has terminated, you know, some support for some platforms. So you may even still looking at 9.2.5 have to consider some of your issues, you know, where you're at with some of your hardware and operating system functionality. So it's kind of just a little list of these, you know, so 9.2.5 and of course 9.2.6 falls right in line with that. So, you know, that I think, yeah, I was gonna say, I think that with, you know, kind of where we had, you know, what we wanted to cover and just kind of open up for Q&A. And thank you for attending. I'll look and see if I don't see anything in the Q&A or chats.
But I did want to mention that for Blueprint in Las Vegas, we will be doing a session on what it actually takes to the technical challenges of upgrading to 9.2.6 to get release 22. There's some very, very detailed processes, things that you don't know about, you know, like the temp space for your Oracle database needs to be 15 gig now, whereas, you know, you used to be able to get away with 4 gig. Just all of the things that we stumbled across in our you know, half a dozen different 64-bit upgrades that we've done, that I've done. And I'll be presenting that. We may do a webcast, but definitely at Blueprint.
I see Sasakumar is asking, one of the Oracle white paper about PSR tests for 64-bit tools showing that there was a negative performance in AS400 with 64-bit JDE tools. John, does that ring any bells with you?
Yeah, and I did want to comment that there are some applications where we can't just say across the board that performance of everything in JD Edwards is going to be faster as a result of going to 64-bit. Not everything gets a performance boost. And there are a few of those out there, and that's one of them. In general, you can make the generalization that if you go to 64-bit, you're going to see faster performance. But don't make the assumption that it's 100%. So, you know, you're going to have to learn some of that in your, you know, prototyping to see what you need to work on.
Thank you, John. Another question. 64-bit business functions have to be loaded. So jar files for external apps and third-party business functions will need to be updated. Question mark. I think the answer is yes, but I'll let you address that one, John, if you can.
I'm not a developer to know for sure, but if they're external to JD Edwards, I can't answer it, but if it's anything JDE related, the answer I believe is yes. Again, I'm not a developer to know for sure.
And you know,
but I will say this: all third-party apps are now converted to 64-bit. Like you had, you mentioned DSI, yeah. You mentioned RF Smart.
Yeah,
they are all.
Yeah.
Yes.
JDE was actually one of the last ones, right? So and feel free to reach out, to Brooke or myself or John. I mean, and obviously, hopefully you can tell by our presentation here, we've done this, and helped customers already, and we're obviously more than willing to help you. Somebody asked if Mimic's compatible with 64-bit tools. I got a few of these questions I'll have to take offline, or do you know that one?
Yeah, Mimix is an
Yeah.
I-series replication tool, and it's my understanding that the I-series backend has been 64-bit for quite some time. I don't know of any reported issues with Mimix.
Mhm. And there are more coming, John. I'm glad you're here because you're the technical guy here. So I think this one you'll know off the top of your head how much memory or CPU needs to be increased if they're moving 32 to 64 for the enterprise server, deployment server, and web. Somewhere.
That's a great question. It's one that is subjective, but in all of the upgrades that we have done to date, I have not seen any additional RAM or CPU required for going to 64-bit. So if your JVM was 2 gigabytes before, you in 2 CPUs, you can keep it at that.
Mm-hmm. Somebody asked about Vertex, and I'm 99% sure that they're already there, and Avalara as well.
Avalara, I believe, is online. Vertex 100%. I know because we assisted them in their migration to 64-bit, and I know they're for sure.
Yep.
Avalara's online. I believe all of that is 64-bit, but I know it's certified.
Yeah. The question was about Vertex, so the answer is yes. Yep.
Yes.
All right. Got another one coming here. Is the recommended way to do the 64-bit conversion on its own instead of tagging it with a tools change?
Well, that's an interesting question. I have to think on that because really, if you're using if you're already on a 32-bit 925 that is supported for 64-bit, you don't have to tag a tools release with it as long as it's a certified version to work with 64-bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you don't have to, but you will have to apply some ESUs. There's no way to get around it. There are some, like the planner ESU is an example. If you go from 32-bit to 64-bit, you're going to have to install the 64-bit planner. I don't have the checklist of all of the ESUs that you would have to apply if you wanted to go that way. I'd say 100% of our 64-bit upgrades have gone, or excuse me, have definitely been along with the tools release. So that's the way it's been in practice, but there's no reason why you couldn't just go to 64-bit if you'd already installed a 32-bit variety of one that would work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. Somebody, Ryan Rodish, sent a message out to host and panelists so everybody can, he says Vertex payroll queue and sales tax queue have to be the 64-bit version, and Vertex sales tax 9.0 is only 64-bit. Vertex O series links was the only OVI tax solution he checked a few weeks ago. Then back into our other Q&A stream. Let's see here. Is Oracle going to stop 32-bit tools release? I mean, no, you can still go to but you can't go newer than 925. It's only 925 or earlier, and you have the 32-bit compatibility. But they're not going to pull support or anything on it. But going forward, if you want to take any updates or upgrades or whatever, you have to go to 64-bit. Yep.
We were told on Tuesday that the 925 series will be bug fixes only, not enhancements.
Let's see here. Somebody's looking for additional steps we need to follow while doing 32-bit, 64-bit upgrade. So I think that question's coming along with if somebody's doing some development in 32-bit and then they're upgrading, you know, should they stop and then go to 64-bit to continue? You know, we're not developers. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but they can continue to develop in 32-bit. I honestly, I have not seen any custom JD Edwards business function or NER development that was done in 32-bit that didn't just work in 64-bit. Now, that's not to say that it won't, you know, but you just continue your 32-bit development, and then you'll have to convert it at a later time. We have yet to run into one that was an issue.
Yep. This one I think I know is update 6 compatible with DSI, and I'm almost positive the answer is yes.
That's what we were told on Tuesday by our friends at Oracle.
Yep. I think I hit them all, but you know, we can dump them off, Brooke, maybe, and then I'll go through them and double check.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'll go ahead and check
maybe a
into
couple of you
questions.
folks, somebody's been asking a lot of questions. Go ahead and you know, shoot us, you know, reach out to us, and you know, we can help you out. So
that's more questions than I've ever had on a session. That's very good.
We got a pretty large session. We got 50 people here, John. So it's a hot topic. You know, that's why I think we took it on. You know, so.
Yeah, we're trying. Maybe it's something you can, if there's comments that you can make, let us know if you want to see a webcast on all of the technical steps of going to 64-bit. We're going to do it at Blueprint for a technology session, but we're trying to measure whether or not we should do a webcast before then. Let us know in your comments.
And of course, you got, you know, we have Brooke here. You can reach out to her for any of your follow-up information. And Brooke, you want to take us over and close it out? We're at the end pretty much.
Yeah, well, we just want to thank you guys so much for attending today, and you guys will be receiving an email, and you can see our educational resources here on the screen right now. We have webcasts, newsletters, resource center, our YouTube channel, and we do on-site and virtual workshops as well. So you'll be able to, you know, access all this information in the follow-up email. And I want to thank you, Bud and John, for your amazing presentation today, and everybody for joining us, as well as your participation. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bud. Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.